Hey everybody, what is up? What is going on? How you guys feeling out there? Man, it is Tuesday. How you guys doing out there? I am Solar Gray, the cinematic sorcerer, and I am coming at you live from the Wizard's Tower. And man, it has been a day. It's been a day. Um, we are working on quite a few things at the moment. Now, first off, I seriously got to apologize. Seriously got to apologize. Um, because yesterday we didn't transmit. Yeah, yesterday there was no transmission, and I get it. I totally understand. Um, but yeah, if you're wondering what went on with that, yeah, there we go. Cool. Yeah, if you're wondering what went on with that yesterday, I will say it's very simple. We had a little bit of a storm coming in from the Wizard's Tower yesterday, and we lost our electricity for quite a few hours, and I mean quite a few hours. And with that being said, no electricity, and I haven't had a chance to tap into the local ley lines, or should I say, regardless of the chance that I have had, I have not taken said opportunity to plug in to said ley lines. That has become a thing. So, yeah, I had to do all. I had to do quite a bit of magic yesterday. It's like all the things I had set up are not rocking with me right now. That's a little weird. So, yeah, yeah, that is most definitely a thing. So, yeah, looking at all that, cool. Making sure that that's there. All right. Now, I'm gonna do a little experiment with the sound, just to make sure that everything is good. Hang on, because I'm not sure how stuff sounds to you guys. There we go. Ah, yeah, just let me know if this music is up just a bit too loud. But yeah, so I did a couple of things here this week, and hopefully all of that stuff is in. I want to say hi and welcome. Now, this is the show where we talk about a whole lot of things. Hey, another Twitch TV viewer and Lady Bath, honey, how you doing? That is such a cool name, I gotta say. Like Lady Bath, honey. Yeah, there you go, honey. That's so great. Um, so in case you guys are new, all right. So in case you guys are new, um, this is the show where we talk about gaming, culture, life, comic books, pop culture, TV, all that jazz from the perspective of people of color, women, LGBTQ, um, the differently able, neurodivergent, and fiscally disenfranchised. Because the trailer park, never more than a couple of miles from the projects. Looks like my signal is coming in really good today, and that's good. So, let me just turn this stuff back on real quick. And yeah, there we are. So, if and you guys, um, if you guys want to help keep us open and keep us all that stuff, like, share, all that jazz, and subscribe to us, but only with your Amazon Prime account. Okay, your Amazon Prime account is the main way that I want subscriptions because it's post-COVID. Everybody's broke. Everybody's trying to catch up on work. Believe me, I get it. I so so get it when I'm talking about that jazz. Next, if you do have the cash to throw our way and all that stuff and you want to subscribe, well, the easier way would be to head over to patreon.com/bid_p, and there you can become a patron, and patrons get all the stuff commercial free, along with a whole bunch of stuff. Now, that first tier right there, that $1, $5, $10 tier, that is what we keep open with. This is how we pay the internet bill and make sure that our equipment is there. Our second tier, our royalty tier, is for our community outreach stuff. All right, guys. One of the things that we do over here is we set up these pop culture, gaming, and creativity clubs in community centers in disenfranchised areas to help the kids with their reading with comic books and teach them how to game, and all the problem solving skills that come along with that, the statistical analysis, the storytelling, the creative writing. We also teach them 3D design and how to use 3D printers, and a lot of what this stuff goes for is to put 3D printers in the community centers for people to use and to train people up, so that they can do it, because the same technology that we use to 3D design is the same stuff we use in architecture, engineering, video games, and of course, machining. So, we put these programs out there for the kids for the kids in community centers that don't have access to these things in general. Not because people don't have Amazon, but because if you have Amazon or any of these other mail order services, you still need the money and the time to invest in that. Some of the kids got time, but most of their parents are working two and a half, 3 jobs just to make sure that ends get met. So that's one of the things that we're out here doing. And our royalty tier of patrons pay for all that stuff with their monthly subscription. But don't think that you're just pouring your money down the toilet, because we also send out things like dice rollers and miniatures and terrain and really cool masks and props, so everybody gets something. I'm just trying to show everybody where the money goes. You get where I'm going with that? Now, if you got any questions, comments, or any of that stuff regarding the community service programs, the show, any of that stuff, questions, comments, you can always head down right there, hey, into the chat. What's up, Neon Arlecchino? Or you can pull up your email and type in back in the deck at gmail.com. It's BACKINTHEDECK at gmail.com. You can also, if you are so inclined, reach out to us on the social media that everybody has, whether they like it or not, being Twitter and Instagram. Ooh, that ain't good. Yeah, Twitter and Instagram. And of course, on those particular things right there, you can totally send us anything that you want to send us, questions, comments, pictures of stuff that you're building at Back in the Deck. That's at symbol Back in the Deck. Hey, an 8-bit box. Fantastic. Thank you so much for the bits, 8-bit spot. That's pretty awesome. Thank you. And of course, if you need some eye bleach from doom scrolling or whatever it is that's going on in your life, check out the musical silence of Lil Saul over at TikTok at BidP. That is at BIDPY. It is spelled the way that it is pronounced. So, with that being said, I definitely want to talk to you guys about a couple of very important things today. First off, there is so much talk about so many things, and we talk about games. This weekend I ran Warp Tumblers. You guys can find it in the archive right here on Twitch. But once it's gone out of here, it's gone, daddy, gone. You're gonna have to be a patron to check out the further adventures of our Warp Tumblers. And of course, again, there was a storm. There's a lot of things that's happening. But today I wanted to talk to you guys about something really, really big and important, to me, to a lot of gamers. Okay. We talk a lot about gaming on a budget. Okay. I push all the time that if you're going to get into a tabletop role-playing game, really you just need the core book, also known as the player's handbook. That's one of the really, really big things that's out there. But let's be real. There is a plethora of supplementary materials. There is aftermarket stuff, third party stuff, expansion after expansion, source book after source book after source book after source book. And let's not talk about um, miniatures and terrain and all the things can be so overwhelming when you look at it if you go into a game store or if you like me watch like things like Critical Role and Rivals of Waterdeep. So many of these YouTubers have like these elaborate sets that were made from Dwarven Forge, and you go and you look at it and it costs an arm, a leg, and half of your soul. I mean, it's a thing. It turns into a thing, and it turns into a thing pretty quickly. And so we have to start asking ourselves one simple question: do we really need all that stuff? I mean, that's the real question that that people ask me when I'm teaching them, and I deal with a lot of brand new gamers because of the clubs and all that jazz. And it's like it's great, it's dandy, it's fantastic to look at, but is it necessary? Well, we are going to begin to answer those questions right after this commercial break because I don't want Mr. Twitch to be on me all the time. And hey, what's going on, subscribers? What is up? What is up? You know, I didn't give my major shout out to my patrons because I'm very tired today, but giving a major shout out to our queen, Shannon Boom Boom Lay, our queen, Laura Holton, our king, Mr. Christopher Chalmers, and of course, our ace in the hole, Shaylee Watson. And these guys, that royalty tier, they're really helping us out with a lot of things. We're looking into expanding the programs right now. I had a very, very fruitful meeting with someone from Steam Forge Games yesterday, so that was looking pretty good. And that's all I can say. Okay. But yeah, this whole supplementary material thing, like I was thinking about all that because when I'm not here doing this, I'm actually building the Patreon perks and working on the machines and going into meetings and all that stuff. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, we're gonna talk about that whole thing, especially since there's so much talk about yet another edition of Dungeons and Dragons coming out. But we'll see. All right, and we're back. So our first our first subject today is going to be supplementary gaming materials. Boy, there are so many things, and this isn't just for you gamers out there, okay? Whatever your hobby is, let's say you're into K-pop, right? And you like the band, you're doing the thing, and that's all great and dandy, okay? And then you find out that there is an import with a demo version of one of your favorite songs on it. Do you need it? Um, you know, I grew up in the 80s and in the 90s, and truth be told, we were in the middle of the speculative comic boom, all right? This was when everybody had what Linkara calls Rob Liefeld's disease, where the artwork was big muscles, muscles over muscles, and the muscles had muscles, and the muscles had guns, and all the guns and the muscles had pouches, and they were all first issues. And we were going, you know, by the time I become an adult, this might pay for a house. But did we need 8 copies of The Death of Superman? Did we need 7 copies of Spawn #1? You know, and here's the thing, all right? Everything that we talk about as far as our hobbies go, they are hobbies. They are not things that we cannot live without. So, by definition, we don't need them. However, when we go into these hobbies, any of these hobbies that make our lives a little more worth living, because as an adult, we always have to ask ourselves the question, am I working to work or am I working to live? So when it comes to the things that you do to live, And I don't mean survive. I mean the things that make you want to wake up in the morning. Um, Question one is, how deep do we want to go? All right. Um, I love Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. I really do. I think it's a really, really good entry point and a very good staying point for people that aren't going to dedicate their lives to being a gamer. I think it's great. If a person likes it but don't want to dedicate their lives to it, that's fine. That's fine. And I stick hard to the axiom. I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. Yeah. I stick very hard to the axiom that all you need is the core book. If you want to play the game, that's what you need. But the question then comes up when you leave your house and when you go into other environments with people that you don't know, do you need the supplementary stuff? And sometimes the answer seems like a yes. If you're going to play, you're going to play. I know when I was growing up, and first starting out, geez, I gotta blow my nose. I'll be, excuse me, allergies. Yeah, I will be right back. I'm gonna get myself a little bit of a tissue, um, to blow my nose, and I'm not gonna do it on screen. So, we'll be right back. Go ahead and leave an email. Right. All right. So much better. So much better. Yeah, my professionalism on today's show is just oozing, isn't it? Anyhow, like I was saying, when you leave your environment to get into a place that not a lot of people might be, there is a whole bunch of peer pressure and gatekeepers and, yada yada yada, who's it. There are so many different ways and reasons to feel feel a bit inferior when it comes to those things. Um, I know when I was first getting into D&D, I just had the player's handbook. And the fact is, I hadn't read the Dragonlance novels or the Baldur's Gate novels or the Forgotten Realms novels. I didn't have a computer. I didn't play the video games, you know. So being part of those crews, oh, that's fun. Ice cream truck. Being part of those crews, playing with those people, I always felt as though I had, what is the term? I always felt as though I had a little bit of a disadvantage. Okay, just a little bit of a disadvantage, and I felt on the outside. Um, but when I found the right people, that was a little different. Um, One of the things I constantly say is I quote one of my favorite musicians because, I play a couple of musical instruments and I'm a dad, which means I like stuff that you were probably not even going to know about. But one of my favorite bands is the Dave Matthews Band. And in their very first album, they have a song that I think is amazing. It's a glorious song. And in the chorus, it says, it turns out it's not where, but who you're with that really matters. Okay. Um, so when you're with a crowd that says, you have to be this tall, there we go. Yeah. When you're with a crowd that says you have to be this tall to ride, this tall, make this much money, or in my case, growing up, it was, what do you mean? It's only $10. I'm like, well, fine, you give it to me then. um, you know, there does seem to be a lot of stuff. Okay, but I'm gonna start off the whole thing by saying no. You don't really need that stuff to have your own fun. Now, here's the thing. Um, the peer pressure is real. The peer pressure comes in, and it's not like those after school specials from when I was growing up or something that you would see on the Disney Channel. You get what I'm saying? It's um it's a thing about culture where people that are part of a culture don't really know it as a culture. They know it as normal. Okay? And that normalcy when it comes to culture takes up a space in the brain that says it's like this all everywhere. It is like this everywhere. And I had to examine that the more and more and more that I ended up doing things like looking online for stuff, checking forums and stuff. Like I said, I watch a lot of videos, I do a lot of research, and there's a lot of people that grew up in an economic status that I'm only achieving now at 40, almost 45 years old. So I don't really know my way around that culture, that area. So when it's like, oh, dude, I've already pre ordered this book, $50. I've backed this Kickstarter, $200. I've done all, and I'm like, whoa, 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 you must be rolling pretty hard. No, 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 no. I just worked my butt off. And I'm like, okay, all right, just stop, stop, stop. Okay. Different scales, different things. So, do you need all this stuff? The answer is no. You can have a whole bunch of fun, but here's the thing with supplemental materials in your hobbies, in your work, in your skills. There's an old saying that it's a poor craftsman that blames their tools. And that is one of the many, many phrases that are woefully overused in American culture. And I will tell you why. Um, I, as you guys know, I've cultivated a lot of skill sets over the years. Music, carpentry, electronics, electrician stuff, so many things. Um, I can do a lot of things, but I very rarely have had access to the proper tools. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean I couldn't do it, but I'll tell you this, just like money can't buy happiness, the right tools can't make you a good craftsman. However, it definitely makes the job easier. Okay. Um, you don't need the supplement books to play Dungeons and Dragons. You don't need a bookshelf full of Pathfinder books to play Pathfinder. You don't need every expansion to every board game, video game that comes out. You don't have to read every single story arc that comes out in comic books, especially when it comes to event stuff where you have to read issue 437 of a book that you don't like because you don't like the characters, but you need that part of the story. It comes out in context. All of these things come out in context. Um, so when it comes to the supplement materials, it is really, really tempting. And there's a lot of pressure to do it, but it's not necessary. How's it going, Fried One? Yeah, that's the hang on, Guten Tag. So yeah. So when it comes to all those things, it makes for a broader experience. But in production, we have a saying: good, fast, cheap. Pick two. You'll never get all three. Okay. And the way that that triad works is very simple. If it's good and fast, it's going to cost you out of the nose. All right. You're going to be paying a lot more financially for something that's good and fast. If it's fast and cheap, it'll get the job done to some extent, and then it will catch fire and irradiate your entire rose garden. And and if it's good and cheap, it's going to take much longer to produce. Okay, I'm living through this right now. I've had my mechanic working on my car for 4 months. However, he's doing it for free. So, um, that means he comes over and works on my car when he has time. It's that simple. Um, Now, when it comes to the supplemental materials, like I'm saying, like getting the expansion books for D&D or Call of Cthulhu or Delta Green, or picking up all those comics, or, getting every single import of the artist that you like, or whatever it is that you do. Um, oh, today's topic? Yeah, it's right here in the description. We're talking supplemental materials and immersion. Okay, all of these supplemental materials, they're not absolutely necessary. All right. Um, what it does put you in the position of is working a little bit harder. As a GM, you know, um, there are things like dungeon tiles and sets that you can get from God. This is not a sponsored video, okay? But stuff that you can get from Dwarven Forge, WizKids, God, so many 3D printed sets of tiles and stuff out there. You can go on Etsy and find a whole bunch of stuff. Hell, you can even get that kind of stuff from us on the Patreon. So many things that you can get. Okay, but is it necessary to run your game? No. No, 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 no. Oh, I yeah, I actually did mean to put it there. Let's see, in the stream info. Thank you for letting me know. Um, but yeah, now today's topic is supplementary materials to your games, miniatures, and immersion. Should have gone out with the thing where it says join us today. Anyway, um, so yeah, quite honestly, these things are not necessary to play the games, to start the games, even though there will be people um to tell you, hey, you need this stuff. Personal story. Um, I used to play a game regularly called Hero Clicks. And it's superhero miniatures that go pew pew, bam, whop, zap, bing. And it was played on a freaking poster. That's it. Okay, that's all we needed. We needed the grid, we needed a few things out there, and it was good. And it spawned from a game. Ooh, encoding overload. Let's hope this works. Um, yeah, quite honestly, it came from a game called Mage Knight. And Mage Knight was a tabletop miniatures game that used measurements with a measuring tape instead of a poster. Okay. And I love playing with toys. Okay. Um, One of the reasons I got into miniature stuff is because I wanted to make toys. But we'll get into that in our next segment. Essentially, um, I created a bunch of 3D terrain to that scale, and it was cool and it was immersive, and a lot of people use the idea, not my stuff, but ideas, um, when they were doing tournaments, especially like sanctioned tournaments and things like that. And it was cool, but it wasn't necessary to play. Okay. Um, so yeah. Wow, look at that. Now it's actually funny that you guys bring this up because I watch a lot of different things. Let's take a look at the chat real quick. Those guys, yeah, that show off their custom made game rooms with fancy tables, miniature shelves, um, and yeah, I do own a library of games I've never played through though. You know what? That's cool, but you have what you need to play in case you ever want to, and that is the whole point. Um, for those people that are out there that are on a budget, you can start with, excuse me, I'm not going to say the bare minimums. I'm not going to say the starter kit, but at least the core books. If you want to get into comic books, start with a trade paperback of a story that you've heard was good. Okay, you don't have to go all the way to the beginning of Batman. You don't have to go all the way to the beginning of a TV show unless you want to. Um, so these are things that are really, really big out there. So, but with that, let's take a quick commercial break, and then I know it's been like God, it's been 20 minutes. Let's take a quick commercial break, and then we'll come back talking about miniatures and immersion. Okay. So yeah, what's going on, guys? Judge Dredd card games. Yeah. Funny thing about that. Card games. I do love me some card games, except for the fact that they tend to be money sinks. The only card game I can really afford to play nowadays with all the stuff that we're doing is the Highlander card game because it's done. It's out of print, but the community in that game is really awesome. You can actually, like, maybe for 200 bucks if you've got it, buy a complete playset of Highlander cards from people that are out there, including all the rares and all the tournament things, because they just like playing the game, and the game is very fun to play. Really fun. I may feature it on a game gallery one of these days. But yeah. Um but this is some really big and weird and interesting stuff. And so yeah. Um Yeah. Oh, well, that's nice. It's not a let's see, Judge Dredd isn't a tradable card game. It's a full game. That's awesome. That's very awesome. Probably like the Lord of the Rings card game that's not from Decipher, or the Game of Thrones card game and board game. So that's the thing. So, welcome back. Especially if you guys are watching this in the future. Um, Now, let's talk miniatures, okay? Miniatures, and this is for the gaming crew, but just hear us out here. Um, when I was young, I saw, and I mean like a tiny, tiny little wizard's apprentice. Um, the one thing I knew about because I saw them first on the Addams Family, but then in other movies and TV shows, were model train sets. Okay. Now, when I was a kid and we would go to a store called JJ Newberry, they had one or two things like a model car. I know I was into the Dukes of Hazzard when I was a kid because I didn't know better. And they had a model of the General Lee. And I didn't know what a model kit was. I just looked at it and I saw toy. And I worked and I scrimped and I saved and I got it after about 3 weeks. And when I had to put it together, I was always disappointed at the difference between my art and the stuff that was on the box. And I had no idea about paint kits and water decals and any of that stuff. I was like 5. But after we glued everything together, I had a pretty cool toy car, you know? Um, and as I got older and got into gaming, I shared in the very first episode of this show how on my fated attempt to try and play D&D, I ended up at a store that's no longer there in the city of Burbank, and there were some kids playing or there were some guys playing Warhammer 40K in the back of the store. And I saw the miniature. I saw the board with the mountains and the buildings and all of the painted miniatures, and I was just like, wow. And what are they using that? What are they using that tape measure for? And they pretty much did the "get away from me, kid, you bother me," and then I got kicked out of the store. Um, don't cry for me. I'm already dead. Um, the thing was, um, that totally got me interested in the hobby, but I had no access to buying the materials and learning how to do it and all that stuff. Thank goodness for the internet. Now any of us can learn how to make miniature terrain and all that jazz. And years later, when I ended up at gaming stores, things were interesting because I saw so many things with the model trains and the moss and the miniature sets, and I was just enthralled, you know, just enthralled by all of it, and I wanted to learn how to do it, but I didn't know what questions to ask. And this ties into today's thing about supplementary materials because I would go to a game store um that would let me in and stay, and I would see people using these elaborate dungeon models. They would be they would have all the dungeon tiles with the walls and the barrels and the barkeeps and all that stuff just to play D&D, which by that point I'd only use Theater of the Mind and maybe the Chessex maps that were dry erase, you know, but having 3D sets was just mind blowing for me. Now, you don't need these things, but what it showed me, the thing that opened up my mind to it, because Hero Clicks was my very first miniatures game. Well, Mage Knight was, but I really wasn't into it because wasn't that big into fantasy. Um, but what I saw once I was able to wrap my head around what miniatures game playing was an organized way to play with your toys without just picking them up and beating them together. Now, I love picking up my toys and beating them together. Um, I still do. If I find myself at a party and I find a bag of toys, I will still probably be like, "Hey, Mr. He-Man, who's trying to kill you?" "Oh no, but they better." "Oh no, it's Skeletor!" I'm all there. Okay. Um, if I find a transformer out of its packaging, I am good for like 3 hours. I love toys. I always have. Um, but, but, when I would play tabletop miniatures games, when I was with my people, i.e., my immediate social circle, playing miniatures games, it was cool. Like one of my best friends to this day, we didn't know how to play these games, and we would use things for terrain like spray cans, and we would knock over a coffee cup, call it a building. We would use my cigarette packs and cans, and that would be like our terrain, things like that. Um, but it really was nothing like that. I'm like, oh my God, Hogwarts looked amazing. And again, this raises the question: do you actually, and I mean actually for real, for real, for real, do you actually need this stuff to play? And the answer is no. No, you don't. But if you want to get into it, how do you do it? Well, there are loads of info out there. Um, and we'll get into that before the end of the show. But really, a lot of people, once they go this route, they don't want to go back. And we all know that guy at the table. Okay, we all know that guy. And it's like, yeah, well, this is cool, but such and such has terrain, and I can't really think of. I have to see it on the map. I have to see it on the board. No, that's not good enough. And I'm like, dude, slow your roll. Just calm down. Calm down. Just relax. We're playing a game with imagination. You know, um, the whole concept of immersion is fascinating to me. And I mean this. It's very, very fascinating to me. Primarily because having grown up with not a lot of material possessions or access to information, I didn't realize how much practice I got with my imagination. I had no idea. Absolutely, positively no idea how much practice I was getting with my imagination. Um, Again, when I was growing up, it was very, very odd in the sense of we didn't have a whole lot that we could cling to on those factors. We just had what we had and did what we did. But but the truth of the matter, the real God's honest truth is we played pretend a lot. We ran around the park. We did a whole bunch of that stuff. And when it came down to it, we didn't realize that we were priming ourselves. And I definitely mean that. We were priming ourselves for using our imaginations and problem solving and stuff later on. Now, I hear people talk about lots of immersion, but they don't use that term. They use the term, it takes me out of the insert medium. Okay. Um, and there are many ways to accomplish immersion. Now, with miniatures, it's very cool. I do like playing games with miniatures, but you know what I don't like? Transporting and storing them. I've been in 1 to 2 bedroom apartments my entire adult life. So transporting them, moving them, all that stuff that we tend to have to do, like to play games and jazz like that. That when it comes down to it, um, that can be a little bit trying. Really, it can really be a little bit trying. So what I will say is no, you don't need it. But if you're going to use it, there are a few things that come down to it. Now, I want to make very clear. Um, I enjoy making terrain. I do. I like making the vast dioramas. I like making hills and mountains. Um, I really enjoy um making 3D stuff for games that I play. Because I had to make up so many games when I was a kid that I never really liked drawing out something on a piece of paper. Okay, that wasn't really my bag. So having that thing that looks, if not store bought, much more than a drawing on a napkin, that is cool. But that's not immersion for me. It is an additional aspect to something I'm doing. Because even if I hate the game, I can go, wow, these miniatures are awesome. It's kind of how I feel about Infinity or Malifaux. Um, Definitely how I feel about Warhammer 40K. Um, so when it comes to these things, when we talk about immersion and getting into it, the number one question that I always recommend for new players is, or not recommend, but the thing that I ask new players more than I ask anyone else is, what is the idea that you have as far as how this stuff is done? Okay, what do you think we're doing? And how is it different from what we're actually doing? That's the conversation I have. I have a friend named Brandon. Haven't seen him for a little while. But when I was doing Hero Clicks battle reports for this channel, they're on the YouTube channel. Um, the interesting thing was I was telling him how awesome the game was and how we can do all this cool stuff. And he was like, yeah, 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 whatever. Blah, blah. But then he saw my girlfriend and I play. And he's like, okay, this actually looks pretty fun. And he started playing. He wasn't really that into comic books, but I gave him some primers with some cartoons like the Legion of Superheroes and the Justice League cartoons and the X-Men cartoon and stuff. And he was like, okay, now I get it. And he was having loads of fun. Loads of fun. He ended up moving to Mexico, so it's a thing. I don't know if he still plays. But all in all in all, um, he had a preconceived notion of what these games were and who played them. All right. And he had a hard time getting into it because he didn't see that he was one of those people. Okay. Um, I am a big proponent of, there is a hobby and a piece of nerd culture that is for everyone. Everybody can find their thing. Okay. Um, I actually love most of it. But I'm an odd duck. I know a lot of people. It's actually funny. I get into it with a lot of friends of mine because I love playing miniatures games and I love building terrain, but I cannot stand painting miniatures for games that I want to play. And I'll tell you why. Most of the crowd that I run with, are hyper perfectionists that don't believe in they don't believe how good they are. And I'm like, dude, when are you gonna love you as much as I do? um, but they are the stereotypical 1990s artists that that only see their own mistakes. Okay, and I'm going, dude, this looks amazing, and that's really easy to do. I watch a lot of tutorials, as I said, and I see people like Black Magic Craft and Wylock's Armory, and these guys are doing like great paint jobs. Using tools that I have only recently gotten access to, like airbrushes. I'm like, I just got to a point where I can afford decent brushes out of somewhere other than the dollar store, you know. And they're like, yeah, this is okay. I mean, it's at least good enough to play with. And I'm like, I'm not going to be that good for 10 or 11 years. Stop playing yourself down. Stop giving away credit. So when it comes to painting miniatures, I don't have the eye to see what they're talking about. But I paint up my figures. I don't go as far as dunk them in paint and put them on the table. Check out the show Hobby Hall that's on the YouTube channel. You'll see what it's like when I'm painting miniatures. It's a thing. But I'm not looking to do like a work of art. I want something that looks a little bit more than plastic so I can get on the table and go pew 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 pew. And I have so many friends that like playing these games, but they spend months and months and months and months and months and months painting them, and then they never have time to play. So I'm like, all right, you guys just admit to yourselves that you just like painting miniatures. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with just liking to make models. Okay, nothing. Um, Nothing at all. And having this stuff around definitely does help with immersion. One of the clubs I opened up um, had come just as Back in the Deck had gotten a donation of some dungeon tiles. And we've been working out how to build our own dungeon tiles for years. Okay, just going over and over, trying to see like what makes ours distinct, what makes them different. And we did a lot. We did so much research, so much work, and um, and the fact of the matter is the stuff I had to do to set up the dungeon tiles to run my D&D game was great once they got in the dungeon. Um, but it was a little work for me as a GM. I actually had platforms, big tiles. I cut out 1 foot by 1 foot pieces of masonite, and I would set up as much of the dungeon that I'd create on that tile, and I kept it away from the table. So they would go through that stage, as it were, and then I would grab the next tile and put it down there. But these things take up a lot of space, okay? And space is odd and precious, but it's a real thing. So these are the types of things that I'm always recommending to people to think about. Just think about. Um, when they want to get into this stuff. I know as a GM, there's a joke about using miniatures and stuff, which is let me populate the board. Oh, I'm going to go over here. Let me populate the board. The drawbacks to having miniatures for immersion in your game, and I mean miniature terrain pieces and dungeon tiles, um, is this. If you have the blueprint of the dungeon that you want to run them through or the bar that they're in or something, um, it is wise to put everything together before the game and put it aside. Okay, that's a really, really, really big thing because players are going to do what players do, and there is a certain level of oh my god when it comes to players going off book because when you put together the miniatures, and you put together the tavern that they're going to go into, or the dungeon that they're going to go into, or the not dungeon but a forest with a path that they're going to go into. If you're putting everything together on the board as it comes, if they make a decision that you didn't plan for, then you have to make sure you have the tiles, and you have to make sure that that if you take them from somewhere else, you know where they go. And if they decide to go to a different place and for a different thing, um, you'll have to build and populate the board. And that can take anywhere from 2 minutes to 5 minutes per decision made. I was super happy that I pre-constructed the dungeon that I had them in on these plates, on these 1 foot by 1 foot plates, and I put them in a place where my players didn't notice, so that I could just stand up, go over, and pop the next one on the table. But here's the thing with that, okay? Um, my nephew, um, yeah, the biggest thing with that is when you do that and your characters decide to go somewhere else, how do you change the idea? Okay? How do you change it? Um you guys are killing me. Shoes can hold minis, that's fine. Um, if you were on here, you'd know I'm on air. Hang on a quick. I'm on the air. Okay. Um, so that in and of itself is really, really big. Um, Now storage is a thing. Storage is most definitely a thing. Like I said, storage and transport. Um, I've been working on very creative ways to do it that you guys will see in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully mid-November so that you guys can check out what we got because I'm working on a few things that I think you guys might like for Christmas. Um, but anyhow, those are some of the things. But we'll be right back. Uh, and yeah, Neon Arlecchino, dude. We need to get together because I have been on the one page rule bandwagon for about 3 years now. And I am all about it, especially with the 3D printer farm that I have here in the studio. That is one of those big things. So I got armies after army after army, and I don't play with the WYSIWYG rule. If you guys are watching and not subject to these commercials like my folks down here in the chat, I will say, I will say, WYSIWYG, definitely a thing that I'm not big on. WYSIWYG is what you see is what you get, which was a rule that was coined by Games Workshop, and we'll get into that in the next segment. But let's welcome back the people that don't have subscriptions. Hey guys, what's going on? So you guys are back now. I want to take a minute to talk about miniatures games and the concept of high standards are being new and going into somewhere with super high standards. Um, this is the thing. Um, like I said, there's a lot of peer pressure in a lot of places. Now, one of the games that I currently am, or one of the major companies that I'm into, and this is just as a fan. Again, these guys are not sponsoring me. I don't have any sponsorships to tell you the truth. Kind of wish I did, but I don't, and that's a thing. Um, hang on. Boo, boo, boo. Now these guys are awesome, and I wish people would okay. So, where was I? Okay. This was my fault. I should have turned off my phone. Anyway, one of the companies that I love working with are One Page Rules. These guys are great and awesome and cool. Um, the rules to their games, believe it or not, are free downloads. Um, because they are all about gamers like me that don't have all the money in the world. Okay. Um, yeah, now honestly they have now this particular company, it's a miniatures game company, but it was started on one idea. How can we take all these rules from Warhammer and 40K and put them on a one page? That would be great. And they did it. And in truth, a lot of people out there today are a lot of people out there today, especially with a bit of an exodus from Warhammer 40K, are getting into this game because the factions themselves are just, they really are analogs. So many different analogs. Um, I got into this because of one of the miniature things that I did, that I watch, and that's Wylock's Armory. And this stuff is just like, wow, this is really cool. It's a sci-fi stuff. Hang on, let me head over to um, yeah, their flagship game was Grimdark Future. Okay, and with this particular game, Grimdark Future, it is Warhammer 40K made for people like me. Um, if you head over to their Facebook, just remind me later. If you head over to their Facebook, you'll see the stuff that they do. Now, I am, yeah, there we go. I'm actually a subscriber to their Patreon, and it's like $100 for the year. And I get so many STLs for their models. And it is, they are really good models. And you know, these models, like I said, are analogs for Warhammer 40K. And the thing was, I didn't even know that they were analogs for 40K. I saw miniature neutral and and other fun stuff, and I'm like, cool. And then it turns out they're pretty much carbon copying the entire Games Workshop thing. But one of the things that I liked a lot, and I mean a lot, are their miniature designs. Um, but they talk about really cool stuff on their miniatures, like here's some paper models so that you can play. Um, what do you got? You got a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, look at this thing. This thing is awesome. Um, and it's literally like 1/10, um, if not lesser, than the cost of Warhammer 40K. I've talked about it on the show before. Um, but again, when I look at that stuff and I download their stuff and I print it and I do all that stuff, um, I show the games to the kids and they're having a blast with it. But do I need to make all of the terrain, like those hills and the crags and all that stuff? Not really. Not really. Um, Once you go there, sometimes it's hard to go back. But there's always a game behind every game you play. I don't care if it's a tabletop role playing game, a tabletop miniatures game, or trying to get a promotion at work. There are underlying rules that are happening that are different from what you've been told things are. Okay? Um, I always say it's the real victory is winning the game behind the game. Okay? Um, and in order to see the game behind the game, first thing you have to do is ask yourself what you want out of it. And it's really easy to say, I want to have fun, but you have to define your criteria for fun. Okay? Always define your internal criteria for what success is. Now, when I sit down at a table and I want to play some Grimdark Future or Grimdark Firefight, or if I'm playing the DC Universe miniatures game or the Marvel Universe miniatures game, from Atomic Mass, Crisis Protocol, um, I see the battle reports, I see the pictures in the book, and I'm like, oh man, I wish my stuff looked like that. But if I want to play, I want to play. And if you really are in it for playing the game, it doesn't matter what board you play on as long as it fits the measurements of the rules as written. Or even if it doesn't and you're fine with that. But when it comes to immersion, most of the time, it comes down to a matter of personal choice. And I know that's a hard one to hear, okay? Um, because if a person has the expectation that they are going to be playing on one of the special effects sets of Lord of the Rings and they're not getting that, um, then they're choosing, honestly, to not or to blind themselves to everything else the experience has to offer. Okay. This is something I had to learn really hard when I was growing up because we didn't have exposure to cool things. They just weren't in our area, or the only way we saw it was on TV. And TV uses a lot of magic, a whole lot of cinematic magic. So, we know a person can't jump 15 feet in the air, but on TV, they can make it look that way. In a movie, they can make it look that way. And we know the big stuff is impossible, but we don't know where that line between possible and impossible comes from. So it's really easy to have high expectations. Okay. And what I'm saying is when it comes to immersion, miniatures, and all the stuff that you think you might need as supplementary materials, if you put in the real effort and you just can't get that feeling unless you buy something else, cool, you know. But understand this, that something else is not ineffable. Okay, I know quite a few people who've been gaming a very long time with just the core rules. I played for a very long time with just the core rules. There have been some books out there, some games out there that never published more than the core rules, but the games were pretty fun as long as the people around were willing to have that fun. So, with that, I want to thank people for showing up today. Um, oh, hey, look. Yep, it's the wrap it up music. Let's see who's in the chat. I want to give my shout outs to, of course, Neon Arlecchino, Clever Little Vixen, another TTV viewer, Casino Thanks. Who's this? Kitten Rescue. Hey, welcome to the channel. We hope you stay around. Lady Bath Honey. Is that Bath Honey? Oh no, Bathory. Okay. Neon Arlecchino, Zilm or XYFM. I'm not quite sure. I can barely see it from over there. Let me take a look here. Oh, there we are. Yeah, XYFM, and of course Sofa King Super, the king of living room furniture. Now, if you guys are just tuning in and you want to join the show, I'm sorry, it's a little bit too late. But pull up an email and send me an email at backinthedeck@gmail.com. That's BACKINTHEDECK at gmail.com. Hit me up on Twitter and Instagram because everybody's got those. At Back in the Deck, BACKINTHEDECK. And if you need some eye bleach from stuff that you've been looking at on the internet that just makes you sad or angry, hop on over to TikTok and check out the musical stylings of Lil Saul. We're going to be dropping at least one song a day, probably starting tomorrow. Just to make things a little happier with all that stuff. If you guys like what we do, and again, I'm sorry for my low energy level today. It's been a little trying. Head on over to, well, first off, you can always subscribe here on Twitch, but just with your Amazon Prime. Okay? If you are willing to spend the cash on the whole thing, I appreciate it. But I would rather that you head on over to patreon.com/BID_P and become a decker, where for less than the cost of a candy bar a month, that is $1 a month, you can become a patron, watch all this stuff over on Patreon and not have to suffer any commercials. And of course, you start getting some really cool stuff. And if you hit the royalty tier, You help fund the programs that we put together to take all of these hobbies, the miniature making, the tabletop role-playing game, the comic books, the cosplay, the 3D printing, the 3D design, all that, into areas that don't have access to these things. Places that don't have game stores and don't have bookstores. There are many of them throughout the United States, and I know it goes globally. And a lot of people can benefit from all this imagination and problem solving, team building and statistical analysis, and 3D design and special effects work and all that stuff that we do. Not to mention the archery and the sword fighting. That's some really cool stuff that we put out there. Hey, I'm sorry about that, RJ. Sorry, man. We're logging off right now, but I'll be reaching out to you in just a couple of minutes. But if you guys want to help keep us alive and through this out, oh dude, you are awesome. All right, thank you so much, man. Yeah, if you guys want to help keep us alive and help us pay them bills, then head on over to Patreon and have patience with us, because Mr. Twitch is like, I wake up in the middle of the night and Mr. Twitch is like, hey, you ain't running enough commercials. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Why can't I move? This isn't good. And, next thing you know, bars of soap and all that stuff. It's terrible. But, so yeah, send me emails, hit up the Patreon and all that stuff. And I want to thank you guys for joining me today. I just want to say, come on back tomorrow at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And remember, if anybody tells you that you don't belong where you are just because of the circumstances of your birth, be it race, religion, creed, gender identity, sexual orientation, disability, or your budget, because the trailer park is just a mile and a half away from the projects in most major cities, you tell them to put those cards back in the deck. This is Solar Gray, the Cinematic Sorcerer, saying thank you so much for joining me on the dark side of the room.